Yeah, if you have a note and a pen, it is advisable that you note these. And if you know programming already, then I suggest you it will be a revision for you again. So the starting conditional statement would be if statement. So the if statement, it is a statement used when you want to execute some set of statements when a particular condition is true. And basically, these conditional statements are used to jump the order of execution in a program. Suppose you want to skip some statements regarding to some conditions, then you use some conditional statements. Suppose you want to jump some conditional statements, then you use these conditional statements. And suppose you want to choose between two statements on the basis of the user input, then you use conditional statements. So basing on the user input or the model of your program, these conditional statements are of many types, and according to your necessity, you can use any one of these or a combination of these. So the basic if statement is used to execute a set of statements when a particular condition is true. And yeah, the syntax for these if statements, as a as I'm highlighting here now, would be an if keyword followed by a condition in parentheses and a curly bracket afterwards, and then the following statements you want to execute if the condition in the statement is true, and then you have to close the if statement showing that these set of statements should be executed when the condition is true. Now the flowchart for the if statement is somewhat like this. The program is continued from top order and it comes to this conditional block, and in this conditional block it checks if the condition is true or it is false, and basing on the condition the certain set of statements get executed. So if the condition is true, the set of statements which you wanted to be executed when they are true get executed, and when it is false, the flow of the program is continued without any disturbance. And the if else statement, coming to the next conditional statement, it is the if else statement. It is used when the condition of if statement condition is going to wrong, else will print the statement which is defined after the else statement in the program. Now, to explain this simply, look at the syntax. If condition, print statement 1, else print statement 2, which means that if the condition 1 is correct, then it will print the statements which you have given for this particular block. If the condition is true, then statement 1 will get executed. Else, this is like a backup statement. So if your condition goes false by any chance, so the statements 2 gets executed. If the condition is wrong, then statement 2 will get executed. And the flowchart for this if else statement would look somewhat like this. The program flow continues and it reaches to this conditional block. And in this conditional block, it checks the condition. And then if it is true, it selects the if it selects the statements following the if block. And if it is false, it selects and executes the statements following the else block. And after these happen, the flow of the program is again continued. And the next comes nested if statements. In these nested if statements are actually a combinational use of if statements in another if statements. So yeah, it is legal in C programming to nest if else statements, which means you can use one if or else if statement inside another if or else if statements. The syntax for this would be if expression 1, which is your condition, and in this if you want to check your condition 2, you can again put your condition 2, and in this if you want to check another condition, you can always put another if or an else block and then check your condition 3, right? So the flowchart for this nested if would be an if condition in the starting of the program continued by another if it is false, and a separate if the statement in the condition 1 is true. So if the statement in the condition 1 is true, then it checks another condition, and then if that condition is true, it gives the output of statement A. If the condition in condition 2 is false, it gives a statement of B, and When the first condition is false, it goes to condition 3, checks the condition, and if that is true, it gives statement C as an output. Else, it will take false and it will output D as an output. And all of this fall in line and the given statement X in the end. And after this, the flow of the program continues. Going to the next conditional statement, which is an else if ladder. This is also a combinational conditional statement, but since in computative programming and elsewhere it is used widely, we are discussing it separately. The word ladder means staircase. So, a staircase. So, as the name implies, this statement is used to choose right way by paths among multiple paths. So, when you have multiple paths, right? So, everywhere at every step you have multiple paths. So, you need to check which path to go. And the easiest way for this would be an else if ladder. And yeah, as I've told, there is another way of putting if conditions together when multi-way decisions are involved, which is an else if ladder. A multi-way decision is a chain of if conditions in which the statement associated with an else condition behaves like another if condition. Now, you would have understand this by now that here a condition 1 would be placed and here a condition 2 would be placed. But here again, this leads to an if block here. Let's consider it up and down for our easiness. And this condition is an else statement. So after this else condition, these statements follow. So if your condition here at this point is true in the if statement, then it goes this way. If it is false, it goes this way. Else, it will go this way by continuing the flow of the program. So yeah, the else if ladder is also called a three-way or multi-way decision-making statement because you have three ways. One is this, second one is this, and the third one is this, right? So the flowchart for this statement would be somewhat like this. In the condition, the entry happens, the flow of the program continues until the first condition. It checks if the condition is true. And if you want to conclude your program after the execution of this condition, and if it is true, then it directly goes and it continues with the program. But then if it is false, it checks for another condition. And if it is true, it executes statement 2 and then it goes into the last statement, which is statement X. And if the condition 2 is false, it goes to condition 3, then checks for its truth value, and if it is true, it executes statement 3 and goes to the statement X. And if it is false, it goes to a condition 4, or here it is given a condition n, implying that you can use as many conditions as you want. So yeah, for condition n to be true, it executes the statement n, and then it goes into statement X, and then it goes out of the program, and it continues the rest of the program. And after the final condition is false, you can give a default statement here and it gets executed no matter the conditions, and then it again goes with the flow of the program. Now I'd like to explain about breaks statement in special because break statement could be used outside loops as well. It can be used in loops as well as it can be used in conditional statements. A break statement is used to exit from a loop or a switch case statement. Generally, we exit from a loop when logical conditions become false. But if we want to exit the loop before the logical condition becomes false, then we can use break statement. So what's the meaning of this? Let's see this flowchart and let's get a clarity. So you enter the loop here and then you test the expression of loop. Then if the expression is true, you go down and you check, the compiler checks for the break statement. If the break statement is given, even though the condition in this condition block is true, it still doesn't execute the remaining body of the loop and it exits the loop. And if there is no break statement, then it goes down. If there is no break statement, then it goes down and it executes the remaining body of the loop. And again, it goes to the loop by checking the condition. So the main purpose of the break loop is exiting the loop whenever and wherever you feel like. This last one we'd be talking about is the most important one, as the practicals would be based on this switch case statement today. So the switch statement may be also used in C to select one of several alternatives. The switch statement is especially useful when the selection is based on the value of a single variable or an integer expression. In C, a switch case statement operation is faster than an if else or else if ladder statement operations. This is because in an else if or an if else ladder operations, you have to choose. I'll take it back, then you'll have a clear idea. Sorry, in a nested if statement, then you can see if you have to choose one out of five, you have to select a one out of five options, then you have to go to the first condition, then go to the second one or the third one basing on this truth value. I'll change my ink color. Yeah. So if you have to choose a one option out of five different options, then you have to choose the first condition, then go down, and then you have to choose the second or the third condition based on the truth value of the first condition. And then you can choose one out of these four options, right? You can see four options here, statement A, B, C, D. So to select one statement out of these four conditions, you used here three loops. And three loops is a lot of time and lot of coding, and so it is generally advised that you use switch statement. And while coming to else if ladder, you can see to select one statement out of four statements. So one, two, three, and statement n. So you can go to n statements here. To select one statement out of n statements, you are checking the condition n times, right? So you are checking it n times, which is a lot of time as well as a lot of coding here too. So an easy way to select one statement out of n statements by using a single input from the user is by using a switch case. So a switch case, as you can see, the program comes down and the expression, and in the expression the cases are checked, and the user input is just compared automatically with every case available until case n, and code block n would get executed if that case gets ejected. Sorry, if that case runs. And then you can see the exit of this loop here. And you can always use a default keyword in this switch case, which is if none of these n cases work, then this block would always get worked, right? So you want to always give an error message after your program. So you can use this default block as an exit block, not just terminating the program. So I'll be discussing about some practical approaches now, and the first one I would be discussing about is a breadboard. Normally, if you want to connect an LED or a simple electrical component into an electrical circuit, then normally wires would be very easy, and yeah, that would be suggested for easier circuits. But what if you had to connect one pin to n pins? For suppose you wanted to connect a single ground pin to four other electrical components. So that wiring would be hard, right? So for that purpose, a breadboard is invented. A breadboard is generally electrical. It is not an electrical circuit. It is just an electrical component. I'm calling it an electrical component because the wires do have resistance, right? They are made of metal and nothing is absolutely perfect. So the side lines of these breadboards, as I'm marking here, let me change my ink color so you'll be having better visibility. So these lines, as you can see here, they are connected vertically, which means if you put one pin of ground here from the Arduino board, if this is the ground pin and you connect it here, then all these pins would become ground pins. Same goes with this, and same goes with this and this as well. So these lines are vertically connected, and one pin connected to this would give the same supply to all of these pins. And the boards in the lines in the middle are horizontally connected when you see from this side. But for now, it is vertically connected from our point of view. So one input to this single pin would give the same input to these four pins as well. So a breadboard is used for our connection easiness. So yeah, rules. The most important rule while connecting a breadboard is not to short circuit the circuit, because while short circuiting the circuit, the electrical components as well as the board may get partially or completely damaged, which can result to loss of, if it's a big project, then it can result to a loss of life, or it can, if it is a small project or a harmless project, it can result to loss of money as well as your hard work. So you can see an example here. This is the shorter lines of the breadboard, and an LED pin is connected to this part as well as this part. And as I've told you, in the shorter lines of the breadboard, this line is always connected in the same sequence. If you connect a single pin of voltage 5 volts here, then in the N2 you'll get a 5-volt supply. So now what happens is, indirectly the positive and the negative pins of the LED are connected directly. So this results in a short circuit. You can always use different lines for different ends. This one is the positive and this one is the negative. So this one is the positive here and this one is the negative here. So here this person used a different line for this both. You can do that, or you can just place this here. One here and another here would do perfectly fine. Or one here and another here would do perfectly fine. But you have to make sure that you don't short circuit any of the electrical component. And the most important part of robotics is sensors and actuators. Um, and there is a small difference between them. So sensor is something that gives input to the board, and actuator is something that takes input from the board and does actual work, right? So you can see the example here. A sensor is a converter that measures a physical size and converts it to a signal that can be read by an instrument, data acquisition device, or an Arduino. Examples: temperature sensor and pressure sensor. So you can see this push button right here. So while pushing this button, this sends an electrical signal to the board, and the board receives the signal, calculates it, and then it gives an output signal to, suppose, an LED here, which is connected to the ground pin here. So now this LED glows, right? This LED glows because this push button has been pushed, and the brain of this circuit is the Arduino, which we are using right now. So now you might have got a clear idea about what is a sensor and what is an actuator. An actuator is a kind of motor that moves or controls a mechanism or system. It is powered by an energy source, typically electrical current, hydraulic fluid pressure, or air pressure, and converts this energy into motion. Example: engine, pump, and valve. So that's the definition of an actuator. And the practical use of actuators are: suppose you want to turn on your motor, right? So to turn on your motor, you need to push a button somewhere. Suppose you have pushed your button somewhere in your mobile phone, right? So in your mobile phone, normally you pushed your button, and this goes through the web to your Node MCU ESP8266 model, which is connected to your Arduino model. And this Arduino model, in fact, in turn, is connected to a servo motor, and this servo motor turns on your actual motor, right? So this is the process behind how to turn on your motor using your phone. This actually, the whole of the cycle runs whenever you use an application to turn on electrical devices. There are relay circuits in between, but we'll be discussing them later after you get a clear input. So the two basic sensors that I'll be discussing today are the potentiometer and photoresistor. The potentiometer, as you can see here, it has a small knob, and with the help of that knob, you can actually vary the voltages. And by varying the voltages, electrical signals will be provided to the Arduino, which takes it as high and low. And according to its digital language, it would do the calculations by the program we provided. And a potentiometer is a simple knob that provides a variable resistance, which we can read into the Arduino board as an analog value. So as you all know Ohm's law, right? So V equal to IR. So as we vary the resistance, the voltage also varies. So the when the resistance increases, then automatically the voltage too, right? So according to the resistance, the amount of current varies and the amount of voltage varies. So the basic idea behind a potentiometer is its resistance. And the project which you will be doing using the potentiometer, this is a brief idea about it. And the things you will be connecting in your Tinkercad would be an Arduino breadboard. To your breadboard, you'll be connecting your Arduino and potentiometer. You'll be connecting an LED and a resistance, and wires between them. So this is somewhat you should like basic ideas about how not to put your potentiometer. If you put your potentiometer here, here, and here, then you can see these both ends are connected to the same small line. And when they are connected to the same small line, it means short circuit, right? So I hope you got your idea that you should connect these to different pins. Now here you can see this end is connected here, and this end is connected to this line, and this front end is connected to this line. All three lines are separate. So that is how you should connect your potentiometer. The next we'll be talking about is the light sensor. The light sensor photocell, it is also called as a photoresistor, or it is called an LDR, light dependent resistor. You'll know why very soon. A light sensor by photocell is a sensor used to detect light. The resistance decreases with increasing light intensity. Okay, so basically, when the light intensity increases, the resistance of this light sensor decreases. And when the resistance decreases, more amount of current flows into it, right? So when more amount of current flows, it gives a high signal. So this is a high end actuating sensor. So this is the experiment which you'll be doing on Tinkercad today using a light sensor. So you'll not be doing direct experiments. You'll be using a switch case too because everything has to be covered, right? So and we have limited time. So we'll be connecting an Arduino, a light sensor, and an LED, resistor, and jumper wires all to a breadboard. And the connection would look somewhat like this. I'll share the PPT with you, don't worry. And also practical assistance will be provided by Rohit. And yeah, thank you so much for the theory session. Now, I'd like Mr. Rohit to take on with the practicals.
Hello, Dheeraj.
Yeah, please take over the session. Thank you.
Okay, fine. Okay, can you see my screen now, Dheeraj?
Hello.
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 Can you see my screen?
Yeah, it is visible. You can carry on.
Okay. So welcome back to another practical session. Today we will we'll putting these circuits into test, the switch case and the photoresistor. So let's start with the circuit of switch case statement. So I hope you are following me simultaneously in your laptops or PCs. So let's create a new circuit design. The most important thing is from today on we'll be using the breadboard. So we will be having more than one connection. So our breadboard is quite mandatory. So let's bring in the Arduino board into display. The next thing you want is the breadboard. Actually, you will be having three sizes of breadboard, I guess. One is small. So you have the small one here, and you also have mini actually. Wait, let me show you. See, we have the mini, and we have this huge breadboard. I think for now we need this small breadboard, which doesn't take up much space, which will be a bit convenient for us. So I'll be taking up this. So what take some let's 5 LEDs, and we will control this with the help of switch case statements. So how can we do that? Let's say we type one key on our keyboard. Let's say A, the letter A. Then the first LED should glow, and when we type B, the second LED glows, and we type C, the third LED, and so on. And One more thing to take care of is if you type any invalid character, let's say 7 or 8, which is not an alphabet, then all the LEDs should go off. So let's put this into the test with the help of the code and with the help of the equipment we have here. And one more important thing which you will be doing as soon as you bring these two into the screen is you need to connect. See, we have, as Dheeraj said, we have these two rows, right? This minus indicates ground. So this row is for ground. This plus is for power. So if you want to connect any of the component to power, you can directly connect it into these holes, and you may not use this power right here. So as soon as you bring these two equipments onto our view, do the following thing, and it's pretty a standard thing. You must be doing it for each and every experiment, which will so we can experiment more conveniently. So this is the power line, right? So let me take a wire and connect it from 5 volts to one of the power line on the breadboard. Actually, you have an mistake here. Let me delete it. This goes there, and in general, this power wires goes in green color, sorry, red color, and the ground wires go in black color. So let me connect this thing. I mean, you can use any of the hole. I'm using this hole because this is closer to our Arduino board. So yeah, go to this wire. Yeah, and as I said, it goes black. Fine. So with the help of this, you can connect several components ground with the help of these holes. Like if you want to connect some component A to power, you can connect it to one of these holes right here. And if you want to connect another component to ground or the same component, you can connect to these holes instead of pulling all the way until here. See, we have only limited things, right? Limited ports. And we also need to make sure that we take maximum use out of this breadboard. So we have these same two power line, I mean same two rows are present here also. So if you connect these both lines, this plus to this plus, make it red, this wire, this wire, make it. So why I did that, because we can make use of these lines too. If you want to connect to power, we can connect it here. Now these all are internally connected. So that is one advantage. Now we can start with our experiment. So before starting any experiment, I suggest you all to do this setup before, so that it will be easy for you when assembling, when making the connections. So let's take some LEDs. Let's take, let's say, 5 LEDs. We'll take LED 1. You can name it 1, 2, 3, and 4. And take 2. I'm going to take 3. Take 4. I'm going to take 5. Yes. And you can connect randomly or in any way you want onto the breadboard. And this some, yeah, it's actually blocking the view. You can bring it in. Yes. So I'm pretty sure you know the basics of the LED. One is the anode, or the positive terminal. The longer terminal pin is the cathode, or and when we use single LED, we didn't make use of the breadboard because I don't want to make it quite complicated. So what we did there was we connected the negative terminal to the ground. So we connected this right here. So when we want to do that now, we need, see, this row or this column right here, all the connections here are internally connected. So if you want to connect any of this to the ground, if you want to connect this terminal to the ground, you can choose any hole, or any, you can choose any hole and you can connect directly to the ground right here. Yes, this indicates the cathode of this LED is connected to ground. Actually, this is ground because this is in turn connected to the Arduino's ground right here, right? So yes, and all of the negative terminals goes to ground. You can change these colors if you want. That's totally. Here I used this hole. That doesn't matter because these all are in the same column, so that won't matter. So all the negative terminals went to the ground. Now it's time for the positive terminals. So we shouldn't connect positive terminal directly to the digital pins. That would be a bit risky, as I told you yesterday. So you need 5 resistors to connect in series with the LED. One, two, and as I told you, this should be a 220 ohms. And only then it can allow some suitable amount of current into the LED. These all are set to kill for some reason. We set to 220. This is actually a standard value of resistance for an LED. Much about it. And there are different resistance for different components. And for the photoresistor, the next experiment will be using some different kind of resistance. These are all 220. You can see the color bands of the resistors got changed. So that's one more thing. So you can connect, as we have discussed yesterday, the one terminal of the resistor is connected to the positive terminal of the LED, and this resistor in turn is connected to one of the digital pin. For these lines, keep in mind that if when you connect this terminal here, it won't be short circuited actually, because this whole portion right here is unconnected from this, is disconnected actually from this portion of holes. Only holes in these rows are internally connected. So if you connect this terminal to any hole right here, this is not short circuited. Portions are not connected. So connected these two, change the color to a blue. Actually, you can connect this directly to one of the digital pins, but I want to make use of this breadboard pull, doing it like this. Make it to blue. Make it to blue. So the one thing you'll be doing now is connect these resistors to the digital pins. We have five. Let's choose any five digital pins here. Let's say 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Those will be five ports, right? So if you want to connect these resistors, you can choose any hole in the same column. So one column is left here. So if you connect this, then it means that this resistor is directly connected to this hole. So let's take this. We connect it to digital pin 2, D2. There goes D3. Actually, you can change the color of the wires. That view. Four. This is the last LED connection. Actually, I'm making these breaks in between these wires. You can click them. You can give a left click, and you can take a turn either left or right, so that it looks much more cleaner instead of directly connecting them in a zigzag manner. So your setup is ready. Now what you need to do is write the code and make use of the switch a particular character from the keyboard. When you give it to the serial monitor, then you can turn particular LED on or off accordingly. So let's look into the code. Make by default you'll get the blink program here, which you don't want now. So I'm just changing. Let us keep setup and loop functions as it is. Let's change these for now. Okay. So what we'll be doing the setup. So what we'll be doing is, yesterday we set up only one LED. We used only one pin mode. So here we are using five LEDs. Do we need five pin modes? Yes, we can do like that, but it's not optimal. As we learned about as we have learned about the for loop, we can make use of this for loop here, which would make our work more easier. So before we do that, we can set up serial communication, because we are giving some value with the keyboard, right, to turn particular LED on or off. And there goes that baud rate, 600 the baud rate, or about it, which most people are comfortable with. And we'll be using uh, uh, all these pins. Say 7. So we initialized it with pin equal to 2, and we'll go all the way up to 6. 2, 3, 6. We won't be going in when pin is 7, because this condition is false, right? 7, 7 is yes. More, but pin is right. When we're going to set it to out, we want the output, right? Yeah, fine. We are ready with this setup. Now let's go into the loop. Now we want one particular thing to be true. Let me tell you what's that. This is a new function which we haven't seen before, I guess. serial dot available is positive. So this condition makes sure that if you this only works if you type something into the serial right here, right? Before, if you type something here, then only you're going to see some output whether it's right or wrong. If you don't type anything here, we need not turn any LED on or off. So we want this program to work only if you give it some input. So this makes sure that you give it some input. Serial is a class and available is an object in part of the class. So serial dot available says that how many bytes is given as input into the serial communication. If the number of bits, sorry, if the number of bytes is greater than 0, which means if the user has typed something itself, this is going to work. So if serial dot available is greater than 0, I'm going to get this off. So we are going to store the see the byte which we give into the serial monitor. We are going to store. So for storing it, what function we are going to use? We are going to use analog. Sorry, serial dot read write. Serial dot. So we are reading some value from the serial monitor and store it into a integer variable of name byte. So what happens next? So with the help of this byte, we want to control these LEDs. So there are many possibilities, right? So when we have when you have to make multi-way decisions or some multiple number of decisions, you use the switch case statements. So what we want to switch now? We want to switch the byte. And what are the cases we have? Yes. Let's say if we typed A into our serial monitor, let's say what we get. So if we typed A, we want this LED, this LED right here, this LED to turn on. So to turn it on, we use digital, right? And to high, right? Okay. And we need to use a break here. If we don't use a break here, that would mess up our program, because as soon if we type A, this statement should get executed, and we need to exit out of the whole loop, whole switch statement, switch block. If you don't put break here, this executes all the cases A, B, C, D, and E, which we don't want. So if we type B, we want 3 to go high, and break. Do this with me. It's quite simple actually. Let's see. We didn't put a break here. That would be a problem if you don't put it. Four, 5. So this is the last. So 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Those are 5 LEDs. It's done. So we need to make sure of another corner case we have. What if the user types F or W or U or Z or some invalid character? So by default, if he does that, we need to take care of the default case. And by default, what we need to do is we need to turn all the LEDs off, which are so with this block we are turning some LED on, right? So if we type some invalid character like Z, U, V or W, then we need to turn all of these off. So we can turn all of them off by using this for loop. Use a pin right here. So this loop turns all the LEDs to off in case the user enters some invalid character other than these characters. So let's see if this works or not. So if there are some errors, then it shows up. That won't be a problem. Let's start simulation. Yeah, the simulation started. Now let me stop this. On the this got messed up a bit. Let's step A. As you can see here, this LED starts glowing. You can change the color of the LEDs. I used all red. See? Yeah, the last one glows. And if you type Z or some invalid character, all of them should turn off. That's yeah. You can modify this program like if you write low here and put some delay, but that's how the program works for now. So this is the program. Now let's look at another. This got a bit messy. You can make sure of that by dragging like this. So let's make another project with the help of photoresistor. Let me go back and create another new circuit. We'll also be photoresistor there, which will be more interesting. Create a new circuit. So the two important things what we need to do here, bring in the Arduino board. This should be quite like a bold thing to do right now, right? And breadboard small. And what we let's connect. Let's make it red. Connect these two. We won't be using these rows actually, but it's actually good practice to make such connections. So we'll be ready. So the new components we'll be bringing now is a photoresistor. Yeah, this is a photoresistor. We will be needing this, and we also need a resistor. I'll tell you why. You will ask, actually this photoresistor is itself a resistor, but you also need a, and that value of the resistor should be 10 kilo ohms. Actually, these values you can find them in the data sheets of electrical components, because it is standard values. As you buy one component, you can simply Google over, or you can see the manual which is provided when you buy it, and it says that you shouldn't put more than certain amount of ohms of resistance, and hence we have 10 kilo ohm resistance here, and we have two terminals here, terminal 1 and terminal and two terminals here as well. let's connect it randomly. Oh, I made a mistake right here. This goes to ground actually. Let me delete it. Yeah, yeah. So the circuit would look like one end of the goes to 5 volts, which is power. So all these, so any of the holes in this column should be connected to 5 volts. So choose this or anything goes. I'm connecting it to power, which is 5 volts. You can make it red. It's up to you. And the other end goes to analog pin, one of the analog. So in this case, let's use 0, A0. Yeah. So the main mode of this experiment is this photoresistor detects the amount of light, the light intensity at each point. So as Dheeraj said, it varies its resistance accordingly. So if more light is falling on it, hello, please raise the voice. Okay, okay. Is it okay now? Hello, hello. Am I audible now?
Yeah, actually, there's been a technical issue. There's been a power cut at Rohit's end. So I just suggest we'd wait for some 5 to 10 minutes